Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Noah and Marco and his whole team for the invitation to come here today. My name is Leah Goldfarb. I'm the Environmental Impact Officer at Platform.sh. My background is in climate science. For the past several decades, I've worked in the sustainability space. So why would someone like me join Platform.sh? So I was intrigued by the co-founders' commitment to addressing climate change in the cloud. Our CEO, Fred Play, has said, we have picked our fight, and it's climate change. So we say, you don't need another server. This is a vastly different message than most cloud providers who say, just throw metal at any problem you have in the cloud. So in the next couple minutes, I'll go over the market share for the ICT sector generally, talk about what we do at Platform.sh, and then discuss our mode strategy, which is really the specifics of how we reduce resource uses in the cloud. And that focuses on measuring, optimizing, deploying, and educating. So I was asked to give an idea of the market share of the information, communication, and technology sector, and I think about that in terms of carbon. So this sector globally represents around 4% of greenhouse gases. That puts it on par with the aviation sector, and it's expected to grow dramatically. There are projections saying by 2040, it may be 15%. But what I want to stress here, it's really the choices that we make today that will determine what trajectory we end up on. We can decide to be much more resource conscious and reduce this growth of emissions within the cloud. So Platform.sh provides a platform in the cloud that is both secure and unified and enterprise grade. It allows developers to do what they do best, which is build, run, and scale fleets of websites and applications. And we take care of all the rest so that they have zero time managing security, infrastructure, and compliance. We are also a proud co-funder of the NOAA conference. We have 400 employees distributed around the world. We're primarily a remote company. We have presence in 40 countries, and 30% of our workforce is women, which is rather exceptional in the tech sector, and we're aiming for gender parity. So I mentioned the mode strategy at the beginning, and the first part of that is through measuring. We use Greenly as our carbon auditor. If you haven't had a carbon audit, I would suggest that you do so that you'll be prepared not only for upcoming sustainability regulations as they come into place, particularly in Europe, but also to give yourself a snapshot of how much carbon is being emitted by your activities. What you see here is scope 1 and 2 are the emissions that are attributed to an office. We have a small office in Paris, and that gives us the 6 tons that you see here. And then the rest of our emissions, like most other companies, come from scope 3. And scope 3 is everything else, and for us, it comes primarily from our clients' activities in the cloud, but also from our employees' IT purchases and travel. Now, this is from 2020, so it was a COVID year, and so that entire scope 3 for our employees was 88. But for the cloud, you can see it's around 1,200, giving us a total of 1,300 tons of CO2. But we're committed to reducing our emissions as much as possible. The second part of the mode strategy is optimizing, and that is done through a shared responsibility model. There is what Platform does, and there is what we encourage our clients to do. So not only did we commission Greenly to provide a carbon audit for us, but we also asked them to do a density study to see how our orchestration in the cloud stacks up compared to a standard deployment. And in this case, it was for AWS Elastic Cloud 2. And what they found is that we are able to run at 12 times higher density than a traditional offer. So what that means is we're using 12 times fewer resources in the cloud. And that means lower CO2. And I'll get to exactly about how much lower CO2 in just a minute. So that's what Platform does. Then we encourage our clients also to use an application performance monitor and update their software so that they can run faster and have fewer emissions. This is an example from Blackfire, which is one of our APMs. And it allows the developers to really identify and see where their resources are being used, identify these, in this case, there's a bottleneck that was able to be resolved, and they were able to reduce resource use by 20 times. That allows then for faster applications in the web. Okay, so the D is for deploy to greener regions. This is just a snapshot from electricity maps showing the carbon intensity of the electric grid. This is something that changes second by second, but this is just to give you an idea. And what you see, everything in green has a carbon intensity of less than 100 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour. And so where you deploy in the web, what type of electricity grid supports your data center is actually quite important. And this is known as a location-based model. This is the standard in carbon accounting, and this is what is used by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Many people come to us and say, but my cloud provider says they run on 100% renewable energy, so there's nothing I have to worry about. They're using what's called a market-based approach, which is one-to-one in terms of electricity, but not one-to-one in terms of carbon. And so they're referring to PPA, power purchase agreements, or renewable energy credits. But it's not quite the same thing, and if you want to use the standard in the industry, you really need to use a location-based approach. And that is why Platform gives you the visibility of the intensity of carbon in the data center that you're running on. Then we have educate. We say that with all humility. We learned a lot doing our carbon audits. And originally, our carbon auditor said that the transfer component was taking up 76% of our resources. And then, through some research that came out of the IEA and George Camilla, we were able to understand that no, transfer is only 30% of emissions, of resources in the cloud, and that has been reflected in the carbon audit that I showed you. So what I want to show here in summary is there are 3 real ways that Platform is able to reduce resources in the web and guarantee that you don't need more and more hardware or another server, but just to deploy in a more sustainable way. And that is through our high-density computing. Also, we have observability tools and monitoring, such as Blackfire, that helps our developers really understand their resource use. And then finally, you can gain even more if you deploy to greener regions. So these are the 3 areas where we can act. It's good to act in one of them, but if you can act in all 3, you can reduce your resources even more. So with that, I'll just say that if you're interested, please reach out to me or my colleague, Raphael Tino, who's here.